Have you ever seen a dog and became instantly happy? Or watched a sad movie and began to cry? Well, if you have you ever asked yourself, what processes in the brain cause me to have this emotional response? If so, I'm here to answer that question. Today, we'll be discussing neural processing. Inside the brain are billions of neurons, and these neurons send signals all across the body that creates a response. Within neurons, there are three main parts: the dendrites, the soma, and the axon. The dendrites receive messages from a sensory input or neighboring neurons. The soma is the cell body which keeps the cell alive. And lastly, the axons send the message across to the neighboring neurons. A myelin sheath can code the axon, speeding up the transmission of messages. When a neuron is stimulated enough, either by a sensory input or neighboring neurons, the neuron sends electrical impulses across the cell. The electrical impulse is known as the action potential. The contact points between the neurons are called the synapse, and the space between the tip of an axon from the ascending neuron and the dendrites from the receiving neuron is known as the synaptic gap. When an action potential reaches the knob-like terminals at the end of an axon, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitter molecules cross the synaptic gap and bind to the receptors on the receiving neuron. These neurotransmitters can excite or inhibit neurons' readiness to fire a message. For example, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter molecule responsible for movement and muscle action. If acetylcholine is released, your muscle contracts. If the neurotransmitter is blocked, the muscle could become paralyzed. Neurotransmitters play a key role in our response to a stimulus. Some examples of neurotransmitters are dopamine, which affect learning and emotions; serotonin, which affects mood; norepinephrine, which affects your alertness and your fight or flight responses; and glutamate, which affects your memory. So let's go back to that earlier example. As you walk past the dog, the brain is sent a stimulus. This stimulus is known as the sensory input that is received by the dendrites. The neuron is now stimulated and sends the message to the axon. If the axon is coated with a myelin sheath, the message will be transmitted at a faster rate. The axon releases a certain neurotransmitter, serotonin. Serotonin is responsible for one's mood, and with increased levels of serotonin, you'll become happier. The science behind neural processing fascinates me because it can impact therapies preventing diseases such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease, and extend our loved ones' lives. Thank you.